Hi, and welcome back to Luxe Consumer IQ. Today we're doing something a little different. This is what I'm calling an Inside the Method episode, essentially a solo, where we unpack the key methodologies luxury brands actually use behind the scenes when it comes to understanding their consumer. If you caught my conversation with Gavin Merriman, Marketing Director at Jaguar Land Rover in the last episode 7, you'll remember he made a really compelling point that while performance marketing has its place, long-term brand building is absolutely critical in luxury. And if you're interested in learning why, be sure to listen to that episode. He referenced brand equity tracking or brand monitoring, and that's what I want us to talk about today. It was originally planned for later in the season, but Gavin's interview set us up perfectly. So today I'm zooming out to explain one of the most important long-term systems luxury brands use to protect value over time, the brand health tracker. If episode 7 with Gavin was about why long-term brand building matters, this episode is about how luxury brands actually monitor it. So let's start by differentiating short-term performance tracking from long-term brand building. In episode 5 and 6 about data and insight, we looked at short-term signals, campaigns, activations, moments where you can see impact relatively quickly. These typically sit at the bottom of the funnel, where consumers decide to act. Those metrics are important. They tell you which levers triggered behavior, but they don't tell you whether the brand itself is becoming stronger. And according to Binet and Field's research, which has become foundational in marketing effectiveness, the optimal performance for sustained growth is roughly 60% long-term brand building and 40% short-term activation. Luxury brands intuitively understood this long before the research proved it. They don't win by optimizing short-term performance alone. They win by protecting meaning, relevance, and credibility over time. Everything we talked about in episode 2 with Dr. Maman Lorifi on how luxury brand management is taught in Paris today. And as Gavin highlighted in episode 7, this is especially true in luxury and high consideration categories where purchase journeys are long. Brands need to enter the consumer's mind much earlier, often well before a purchase is even being contemplated. That's exactly why brand health tracking exists. These metrics answer a different question. Not did the campaign perform, but is the brand gaining strength? Okay, so what is brand health tracking? At its core, a brand health tracker is a reoccurring piece of structured, quantitative market research designed to measure how a brand lives in the mind of consumers over time. It's run consistently, the same questions, the same market, the same audience definitions, quarter after quarter, year after year. In fact, change one thing and you'll lose the ability to compare movement on these scores completely. Because naturally, to track movement, you need a point A and a point B without anything changing in between. So this isn't research for curiosity, it's research for measurement. Its role is to tell the business whether the brand is strengthening, stagnating, or becoming fragile overall, regardless of how the last launch or campaign performed. In luxury, that long-term visibility is non-negotiable. Now, I need to be direct about something because brand health tracking is a significant investment. Running a tracker consistently across markets can cost hundreds of thousands annually, sometimes more depending on your footprint and your sample requirements. So if your brand is just starting out, you're in a niche category, or working with limited budget, you might not be able to run a full tracker every quarter across every market. And that's okay. What matters is consistency within what you can afford. If you can only track annually, but track the same metrics the same way every time. If you can only afford to track 3 core markets, pick your 3 most strategic markets and protect that investment. Some brands even choose to focus on just 3 to 5 metrics rather than tracking everything. The principle remains the same: measurement consistently over time so you can see the movement. Because the cost of not tracking, of making strategic decisions blind, is far higher. So what does a brand health tracker actually measure? At its foundation, it tracks the classic marketing funnel: awareness, consideration, preference, and purchase intent. So awareness, Do consumers know the brand exists? Consideration, as it suggests, would they think of you when they're making a choice? Preference, do they prefer your brand over competitors? And purchase intent, would they claim that they would choose you? But luxury brand trackers go deeper. They measure brand imagery, the associations consumers hold about the brand. What does it stand for? What codes and meanings are landing? Is the brand emotionally resonant or just visible? This is critical in luxury because visibility without meaning is just noise. And just to be clear, this is claimed behavior, not actual transactional data. And this isn't how people literally buy. Real journeys are messier, but it's how we organize measurement over time. Think of it like this. The top of the funnel is about entering the conversation. Does the consumer even know you exist? The middle is about earning a seat at the table. Are they considering you when they think about the category? And the bottom is about intent to choose. Would they actually pick you over competitors? Now, every brand cares about the full funnel, but luxury brands focus more heavily on the top and the middle, and here's why. 3 reasons. The first, purchase cycles are longer. Brand choice happens months or years before purchase. The second, rarity and desirability must be protected. If you optimize too hard for conversion, you risk eroding what makes the brand valuable in the first place. 3, conversion optimization alone can damage brand equity. You can sell more in the short term and weaken the brand long term. So the real focus sits in the upper and middle stages, what we call the top of the funnel. Are we building meaning? Are our brand codes landing consistently? Is the brand gaining emotional pull, not just visibility? The bottom of the funnel, conversion, purchase, is still tracked, of course, but luxury is far less concerned with how fast someone converts and far more concerned with whether strength is accumulating over time at the top. This is particularly true in categories with long purchase journeys, like cars, high-end watches, or fine jewelry, where brand choice is often shaped months or even years before a transaction takes place. If the top and the middle of the funnel are strong, the commercial outcomes follow, just not instantly. So how does this work in practice? Brand health tracking is typically too important to be fragmented. In large luxury groups, it's usually centralized, overseen by a global role responsible for protecting consistently across markets and maisons. If you're working in an emerging brand, you might not have that infrastructure yet, and that's fine. The principle still holds. Brand meaning cannot drift. Whether you're tracking one market or 20, the system needs to be consistent. While brand tracking is typically centralized at global level, execution, of course, happens locally, at the market level. In my own experience, when I was working in market, I managed a brand health tracker locally, working very closely, however, with the central insights team. This structure ensured local market questions and nuances were addressed while still protecting the global brand focus and long-term strategy. The central insights team managed the agency directly and coordinated every tracker across every country. We actually couldn't go direct to the agency at all. Everything had to flow through the central role. So why structure it this way? Because it ensures the brand tracks what matters most consistently and across all markets. So how long should it take to see movements in your long-term metrics? This is where Gavin's insight in episode 7 became especially important. In our conversation, he was very clear that meaningful movement in brand health metrics does not happen quickly. In his experience, it typically takes between 12 and 18 months for strategic brand actions to show up meaningfully in brand health tracking. And I would absolutely agree with this. This timing isn't a flaw. It's the system working exactly as intended. Brand meaning doesn't respond to noise. It responds to consistency. One of the biggest mistakes teams make in expecting immediate validation from tools that were designed to measure long-term strength. That said, if you've invested consistently for 18 months or more and you're still not seeing any movement at all, that's a signal. It usually means one of 3 things. 1, your target audience definition is off and you're tracking the wrong consumers. 2, your execution has been inconsistent with mixed messages and fragmented campaigns. Or 3, the strategy itself needs revising. The tracker will show you that too. That's part of its value. So let's take a real life example, and I've seen this many times in practice. A brand invests heavily in long-term storytelling, consistent brand codes, and elevated execution. Over time, the brand health metrics start to lift. Awareness stabilizes, consideration improves, emotional affinity strengthens, but sales don't move immediately. This is often the moment where less confident teams start to question the strategy. They see the metrics improving, but don't see immediate revenue impact, and they panic. But here's the thing, this lag is exactly where you'd expect, especially in categories with long purchase journeys. The brand is doing the hard work of entering the consumer's mental availability earlier, well before a purchase decision is made. Brand health is showing you that the groundwork is being laid. Don't abandon the strategy just because the commercial results haven't hit yet. Trust the system. I've also seen the opposite. Campaigns that perform brilliantly. In the short term, strong response, strong numbers, but over time, brand health begins to erode. Why? Because too much of the budget has been spent on activation only. The brand becomes more visible, yes, but less distinctive, less emotionally resonant, and less desirable. Eventually, the consequences show up very clearly. Price needs to be reduced, promotions need to be more frequent, and heavier activation is required to generate the same result that once came more naturally. This is what senior marketers and insights leaders mean when they say you cannot stop long-term brand building. Brand health trackers are designed to surface this risk early, before the erosion becomes structural and very difficult to reverse. Okay, so how should you as a marketer actually use these insights in your everyday job? Yes, insight teams usually manage the tracker. And yes, agencies often run the research, but marketing teams are accountable for what moves. And this is the part many marketers skip. Once the research has been presented, some just set and forget. If you've ever sat in a meeting defending a long-term brand idea while someone asks, why didn't it work in 3 months? This is the system that will prove why that question misses the point entirely. In mature luxury organizations, brand health metrics are not passive readouts. They are targeted. Each marketing plan typically identifies 1 or 2 priority health metrics linked to strategic intent, not individual campaigns. If nothing in your marketing plan is explicitly designed to move a brand health metrics, then, well, your brand building is happening by accident. This system also allows you to understand performance relative to competitors. Now, some brands take the position that they don't need to look at competitors. But here's the reality. Consumers don't choose brands in isolation. They hold a repertoire, a mental shortlist of brands they consider in a category. So what matters isn't just whether your awareness or preference is improving. It's whether you're strengthening those metrics more effectively than your competitors. Are you gaining share of consideration? Are you closing the gap or widening it? These studies usually include competitive data for exactly that reason. It shows you where you sit in the consumer's mind relative to the other brand they're thinking about. One more critical distinction. A brand health tracker isn't there to tell you whether your last campaign worked, which we referenced a little earlier. Short-term impact is better assessed through brand lift studies or immediate sales or other response data. Brand health tells you whether all of those efforts combined over time are strengthening the brand itself. And this is where senior credibility shows up. In long-term brand building, you don't say, the campaign performed well. You say, over time, we strengthened consideration by 8 points and emotional affinity by 12%. That's the language leadership listens to. And it's how, as a marketing professional, you can show your value to the next employer. Not because you said you're good, but because the numbers speak for themselves. So let me leave you with 2 practical actions. First, if you're writing a brand or marketing plan, ask yourself this question. Which long-term brand metric is this plan designed to move? If the answer is none, if everything is focused on short-term activation, then brand building is happening by accident, not by design. So add at least one initiative that's explicitly tied to strengthening awareness, consideration, or preference over time. Second, if you're taking over a brand or stepping into a new role, the brand health tracker should be one of the first places you look. Go back 5 years if you can. Which metrics have been moving? Which have been flat? Which needle has the brand team been trying to move before you got here? This will help you a lot about the brand's relationship with consumers, where past strategies worked and where they didn't. It's one of the fastest ways to get smart on a brand. And one more thing before we close. Gavin also briefly mentioned econometrics and MMM, marketing mix modeling. These are powerful tools and they absolutely have a place in luxury, but they deserve their own dedicated conversation. For now, it's enough to understand the distinction. Brand health tells you whether the brand is strengthening. Econometrics and MMM help you understand how different investments contribute over time. We'll come back to that in a future episode to give it justice. So if there's one thing to take away from today, it's this. Brand health is non-negotiable in luxury because it protects what cannot be rebuilt quickly. It's the closest we can get to quantifying desire at scale. The associations, relevance, and emotional pull that make a brand worth wanting. And I can tell you firsthand, as someone who has worked on the inside and obsessed over this question for years, we have tried to find an exact measure for desire. Tools like semiotics help us decode the cultural codes that create desire. But brand health tracking is what allows us to measure whether that desire is actually building across markets, consistently, and over time. Think of it as a proxy because desire is inferred. It cannot be directly measured, but it's the best proxy we have at scale. Now, depending on the structure of your organization, as the marketer, you probably won't be running a tracker yourself, but you do need to understand how it works, how long it takes, and how it's used. Because in luxury, long-term value isn't loud. It's protected quietly, consistently, and over time. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.